The desperate call. The message floated through the void like a dying star's last gasp. It was simple, desperate, and sent on every frequency the Lumiri transmission hub could manage before its power cores finally failed. To any species capable of receiving this signal, our world, Lumer Prime, faces extinction. The Khazaric Dominion has broken through our final defenses. We have no military. We have no weapons. Our people are peaceful. We beg for evacuation assistance. Our children number 12 million. Please help us survive. Ambassador Thala Shimmersong, her iridescent scales dulled with exhaustion, slumped against the transmission console. Around her, the once gleaming crystal spires of the capital city lay shattered, their remnants scattered across the azure plains like fallen tears. The Lumiri had never developed weapons of war. Why would they? Their civilization had evolved around art, philosophy, and the deep cultivation of empathic abilities that connected them to the living essence of their world. The Khazaric didn't care about any of that. They had arrived 3 lunar cycles ago, their massive hive ships blotting out Lumir's twin suns. No demands were made, no communications attempted. They simply began the systematic destruction of Lumiri infrastructure, their ground forces capturing thousands for purposes unknown. "Will anyone answer, Ambassador?" asked Rayleigh, his voice barely above a whisper. The young Lumiri's tendrils quivered with the emotional residue of fear that permeated the underground shelter. Thala didn't have the heart to crush what little hope remained. "Perhaps," she said, "but the Galactic Council has already refused our pleas. The Trade Federation considers us economically non-viable for intervention." "What about the others?" Rayleigh asked hesitantly. "The ones from the Death World?" A chill rippled through Thala's scales. The humans, Earth's inhabitants, were more legend than reality to most galactic species now. A century ago, they had burst onto the interstellar scene with technology that shouldn't have been possible for such a young species. They'd fought in the Proxima conflict, helping end the Vrexian Empire's expansion. Then, as suddenly as they'd appeared, they withdrew, sealing their borders and cutting diplomatic ties. The stories about them persisted, though. Born on a world where everything, the atmosphere, the wildlife, the geography, even the microbes, seemed designed to kill them. Evolution had crafted them into resilient, adaptable predators. Their technology reflected this heritage. Not elegant or beautiful, but durable, functional, and devastatingly effective. The humans have not responded to any diplomatic outreach in 73 years, Thala said gently. They would not. The shelter's alarm system suddenly shrieked to life. Above them, sensors detected massive gravitational distortions, slip space ruptures, dozens of them. "The Khazaric reinforcements," someone wailed. "They've brought their world breakers, but..." The energy signatures weren't Khazaric. They weren't like anything in the Lumiri database. On the surface, the sky tore open in multiple locations, the fabric of space parting like curtains to reveal massive silhouettes. Ships emerged from the ruptures, their hulls matte black with no visible running lights, no identifiable markings. They moved with unnatural precision, flowing into formation like predators encircling prey. The Khazaric noticed immediately. Their hive ships broke orbit, plasma weapons charging, launching swarms of fighter craft toward the newcomers. For several tense moments, nothing happened. The unknown fleet held position, silent and motionless against the onslaught approaching them. Then they responded. The lead Khazaric hive ship, a behemoth housing over 100,000 warriors, simply disappeared in a flash of light so intense it temporarily blinded observation sensors. When the systems recovered, nothing remained but spreading particles and radiation. "What happened?" Rayleigh gasped. "Did they have cloaking technology?" Thala's scientific advisor, Elder Valine, shook, her head in disbelief. "No. That was... The ship was hit with some kind of kinetic weapon, moving at impossible speeds. Throughout Lumiri history, warfare had been abandoned millennia ago as wasteful and primitive. Energy weapons were the civilized choice in the rare conflicts that erupted between advanced species. Kinetic weapons were relegated to emerging civilizations, or those lacking technological sophistication. What they were witnessing defied that understanding. The unknown fleet moved then, spreading, outward in attack formations. More flashes lit the sky. More Xaric ships evaporated. The smaller craft tried to retreat but were caught in webs of light that seemed to dissolve their molecular bonds. Some attempted to flee into slip space only to be yanked back into normal space by unknown means. It wasn't a battle. It was an execution. "Who are they?" Thala whispered, her empathic senses overwhelmed by the scale of destruction unfolding above. Her answer came minutes later, when all Lumiri communication systems simultaneously activated. A voice spoke, flat, emotionless, in perfect Lumiri language. "This is Admiral Helena Vasquez of the United Earth Fleet. We have received your distress signal and have responded with appropriate measures. All Xaric forces in this system will be neutralized. Remain in your shelters. This is not a rescue mission. This is pest control." The Lumiri shelter fell silent. Humans, the Deathworlders, had come. Over the next 36 hours, the Lumiri huddled in their shelters, feeling the tremors as orbital bombardments shook their world. The communication systems remained active, broadcasting tactical updates from the human fleet that the Lumiri barely comprehended. Xaric cluster in Sector 7 eliminated. Orbital defense grid established. Ground teams deploying to Sectors 3, 8, and 12. Neutralizing subterranean hives. On the third day, the vibrations stopped. The skies above Lumir Prime, visible through the few functioning external cameras, showed only the silent human ships, now in stable orbit around the planet. Thala called an emergency council of the surviving Lumiri leaders. "They answered our call," she said, "but not with diplomats or evacuation ships. They brought a war fleet." "Why?" Elder Valine's scales flickered with nervous energy. "The humans have always been different. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them at every turn. Their psychology, their approach to threats, it's unlike anything in known space." "But they've been isolated for decades," argued another council member. "Why break that isolation for us? We have no strategic value, no rare resources." "Perhaps they simply heard our plea and decided to help," Relith suggested. Valine's laugh was bitter. "Deathworlders don't think that way, child. If they're here, they have a reason beyond altruism." The shelter's entrance seal suddenly hissed, "Open." Everyone froze. 3 figures entered, clad in matte black armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Helmets concealed their faces, and they moved with a predator's measured grace. Weapons unlike anything the Lumiri had seen before were mounted on their armor, though they remained inactive. The central figure stepped forward and removed their helmet, revealing a human female with dark skin, close-cropped silver hair, and eyes that reminded Thala of the ancient obsidian artifacts her people had discovered in the deep caves. "Ambassador Thala Shimmersong?" the human asked, her voice matching the transmission they'd heard earlier. Thala stepped forward on trembling limbs. "I am she. Are you Admiral Vasquez?" "I am. Your SOS was received by one of our long-range listening posts." Her gaze swept over the assembled Lumiri. "The Xaric forces have been eliminated from your system. Their reinforcements won't be coming." "You destroyed them all?" Relith asked, unable to mask the horror in his voice. The Admiral's expression didn't change. "We did what was necessary. The Xaric are not mere conquerors. They're a parasitic species that converts conquered populations into host bodies for their larvae. They've done this to 7 worlds in the past decade while the Galactic Council debates sanctions." Murmurs of shock rippled through the shelter. The Lumiri hadn't known this. The Council had classified all information about Xaric activities. "But why did you come?" Thala asked. "Earth has been isolated for generations." For the first time, something like emotion flickered across the Admiral's face, a brief tightening around the eyes, a subtle tension in her jaw. "We've been watching, always watching. The fact that we closed our borders doesn't mean we abandoned the galaxy." She paused. "There's something else you should know. The Xaric didn't choose your world at random. She gestured, and one of her companions activated a holographic projection in the center of the shelter. It showed a three-dimensional map of Lumiere Prime with several pulsing points deep beneath the surface. These energy signatures, Vasquez continued, are what drew them here. Ancient technology, buried beneath your cities. Technology they've been searching for across multiple star systems. Thela stared at the projection in confusion. We've never detected anything like this. You wouldn't have. The technology is designed to remain dormant until activated by specific energy patterns. Patterns the Xaric accidentally discovered how to generate. The Admiral's voice hardened. The same patterns that nearly caused the extinction of humanity 300 years ago when we found similar artifacts on Mars. The shelter fell silent as the implications sank in. The Lumiere hadn't just been victims of random conquest. They'd been sitting on something the rest of the galaxy either coveted or feared, and the Deathworlders had come not just to answer their call for help, but to ensure that whatever lay beneath their world wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. Admiral Vasquez replaced her helmet, the faceplate sealing with a soft hiss. We'll begin scanning your population centers immediately. My teams will extract any Xaric stragglers and evaluate the status of the buried technology. She turned to leave, then paused. Ambassador, you might want to prepare your people. This isn't over yet. As the humans departed, Thela felt a chill run through her scales. The Xaric threat had been eliminated with frightening efficiency, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they'd exchanged one danger for another. The Deathworlders had answered their desperate call not with mercy ships but with a war fleet, capable of annihilating an entire invasion force in days. And now these efficient killers were walking among them, hunting for something ancient and dangerous beneath their feet. The question that haunted Thela wasn't whether humanity had saved them, it was why. The Hidden Truth Commander Marcus Chen moved through the ruins of what had once been the Lumiere capital's central plaza, his armors, sensors cataloging radiation signatures and biochemical traces. 3 days of methodical sweeps had confirmed the Admiral's suspicions. The Xaric had established deep tunneling operations at 7 key locations around the planet. Status report, came Vasquez's voice through his neural link. Sector 5. Secure, he replied, watching as his squad deployed sensor drones into a partially collapsed structure. We've located the primary dig site. It's concerning, Admiral. Elaborate. Chen gestured to his second-in-command, who projected a holographic representation of what lay beneath the crystalline ruins. They excavated down to approximately 200 meters below the surface. The artifact is partially exposed. Looks like they were trying to extract a component rather than activate it. A pause. Containment status? Stable for now, but readings match. The Alpha 7 pattern. If they'd broken the primary shell, he didn't need to finish. Everyone in Earth's special operations knew what had happened on Proxima Centauri B when a similar artifact had been improperly handled. An entire continent rendered uninhabitable in seconds. Understood. Continue the operation. I'm heading to the Lumiere Council Chamber. Time to provide some context. Chen acknowledged and turned his attention back to the dig site. His scientists were already deploying containment fields around the exposed section of the artifact. A curved surface that seemed to absorb all light, covered in geometric patterns that somehow hurt to look at directly. One of the specialists approached him. Sir, we've recovered data cores from the Xaric excavation equipment. You'll want to see this. The information was disturbing. The Xaric hadn't discovered these artifacts by accident. They'd been directed here. Star charts, transmission logs, and excavation coordinates all pointed to an external source of intelligence. Forward everything to the Admiral, Chen ordered, and double the security perimeter. In the makeshift council chamber established in one of the few intact Lumiere structures, Admiral Vasquez faced Ambassador Thela and the surviving Lumiere leadership. The atmosphere was tense, the Lumiere's natural bioluminescence dimmed with stress and uncertainty. I owe you an explanation, Vasquez began, about why Earth broke 73 years of isolation to answer your distress call. She activated a holographic display showing a galaxy map with specific systems highlighted. 300 years ago, humanity discovered its first alien artifact on Mars. We activated it without understanding what it was. Her voice remained steady, but her hands clenched slightly. The resulting energy pulse killed everyone within. 1,000-kilometer radius and would have sterilized Earth if the secondary systems had engaged. Murmurs of horror rippled through the Lumiri Council. We learned that these artifacts, we call them precursor technology, are scattered throughout the galaxy. Some are weapons, some are communication devices, some appear to be components of something much larger. All are incredibly dangerous when mishandled. Thela's tendrils quivered. And you believe such devices exist beneath our world? We know, they do. It's why the Kazarak came here. They've been hunting these artifacts across multiple systems. Vasquez's eyes narrowed. But someone is directing them. Someone who wanted this technology badly enough to sacrifice an entire invasion force. She displayed intercepted Kazarak communications, translated into Lumiri script. These coordinates, these specific dig sites, they were provided to the Kazarak by someone with intimate knowledge of precursor technology, someone who knew exactly what was buried here and how to extract it safely. Elder Valine leaned forward. Who would do such a thing? And why not come themselves? Because direct involvement would violate Galactic Council directives. Vasquez's voice was cold. Precursor technology is classified as Omega-level restricted. No species is permitted to research or interact with it. Then why are humans involved? Thela asked. A mirthless smile crossed Vasquez's face. Because humanity never signed those accords. After our incident on Mars, we developed protocols for handling precursor tech. When we realized what was happening in the galaxy, these random Kazarak attacks all targeting worlds with buried artifacts, we knew we had to intervene. She displayed another image. A massive ship unlike anything the Lumiri had seen before. This vessel was captured in deep space 3 weeks ago. Not Kazarak. It was observing their invasion of your world from a distance. The ship's design was sleek, elegant, and unmistakably of Council origin. You're suggesting the Galactic Council itself is behind this? Rayleigh asked, his voice rising in pitch. But they refused to help us. Not the Council as a whole, Vasquez clarified. A faction within it. We believe high-ranking officials from at least 3 Council species are using the Kazarak as proxies to acquire precursor technology while maintaining plausible deniability. Thela felt her world tilting sideways. So our people were sacrificed. As cover for this conspiracy? Yes. And we have reason to believe your world was specifically chosen because of your pacifistic nature. You had no defenses, no military that might accidentally damage the artifacts during a conflict. The revelation struck like physical blow. The Lumiri had always prided themselves on their peaceful evolution, their rejection of violence. Now that same philosophical choice had made them perfect victims. Commander Chen to Admiral Vasquez, came a sudden transmission. Priority Alpha. Vasquez stepped away briefly to receive the communication, her expression darkening. When she returned to the Council, her posture had changed, coiled tension replacing military formality. We have a problem. One of the artifacts has initiated an activation sequence. We believe the Kazarak triggered a failsafe before we eliminated them. What does that mean? Thela asked, dread flooding her system. It means we have approximately 6 hours before the primary array beneath your southern continent attempts to establish connection with other precursor sites across the galaxy. Vasquez's eyes met Thela's. If that happens, every artifact in 50 light-years could activate simultaneously. The implications didn't need explanation. Planetary destruction on an unprecedented scale. What can be done? Elder Valine asked, her voice barely audible. We have containment protocols, but they require direct access to the primary control node. Vasquez hesitated, then continued. Ambassador, I need something from you. Your people have unique abilities. Your empathic connection to living systems. Our scientists believe this might allow you to interface with the precursor technology in ways we cannot. Thela stared at the human admiral. You want us to help you? After telling us that these devices could destroy worlds? I understand your reluctance, but consider the alternative. Vasquez's voice softened slightly. My fleet is prepared to evacuate as many of your people as possible if containment fails, but we estimate we could only save perhaps 20% of your population. The council chamber erupted in voices, fear and anger mingling in a cacophony of distress. Thala raised her hands for silence. What exactly would be required of us? She asked. 4 hours later, Thala stood with Commander Chen and a team of human specialists in a massive underground chamber. The journey through the Xaric excavation tunnels had been harrowing, but nothing compared to the sight that greeted them. The chamber was clearly not of Lumiri origin. Its walls were composed of a material that seemed to phase between solid and liquid states, covered in patterns that moved when not directly observed. At its center stood a spire of the same impossible black material they'd seen in smaller fragments elsewhere, pulsing with energy that made the air itself feel heavy. This is the primary node, Chen explained, his voice tight. The activation sequence is at 63%. Once it reaches 100, it will attempt connection with other nodes. Thala approached the spire cautiously. 5 other Lumiri had accompanied her, the strongest empaths among their survivors. Our theory, said Dr. Khatri, the human scientist, leading the containment team, is that the precursors were themselves empathic beings. These devices appear to respond to specific neural patterns that your species naturally generates. You want us to communicate with it? Asked Relith, who had insisted on joining despite Thala's objections. Not exactly. We want you to help us access its control system so we can initiate a controlled shutdown. Dr. Khatri handed each Lumiri a small device. These will help us monitor your neural patterns and translate them into commands the system might recognize. Thala exchanged glances with her fellow Lumiri. The risk was enormous, but the alternative was unthinkable. We're ready, she said. The 6 Lumiri formed a circle around the spire, their tendrils extended toward the pulsing surface. Thala closed her eyes, reaching out with her empathic senses, as she had done countless times to connect with Lumire's native life forms. At first there was nothing, just the void of an inorganic object. Then, like a distant whisper, something responded. The sensation was unlike anything she had experienced before. Not consciousness as she understood it, but patterns. Complex, ancient patterns that seemed to resonate with her own neural architecture. Images flooded her mind, stars being born, civilizations rising and falling, a network spanning galaxies. It's working. Dr. Khatri's voice seemed to come from very far away. The activation sequence is pausing. Thala pushed deeper, guided by the human scientist's instructions relayed through Commander Chen. The other Lumiri joined their consciousness with hers, strengthening the connection. Together, they navigated the alien system's architecture, searching for the shutdown protocols the humans believed must exist. What they found instead was a message, encoded not in language, but in pure concept. Warning. Contingency network activated. Quarantine protocols initiated. Stellar anomaly detected in sector, untranslatable. Evacuation underway. Preservation nodes active. It's not a weapon, Thala gasped, the realization flooding through her. It's a warning system, a preservation network. The human's instruments went wild as data poured from the activated node. She's right, Dr. Khatri confirmed, eyes wide as she scanned the incoming information. These aren't weapons. They're some kind of emergency system created by the precursors before they disappeared. Commander Chen's voice was tight with urgency. Can you shut it down? Thala hesitated. I don't think we should. Not completely. Through her connection, she was beginning to understand the artifact's true purpose. It was designed to preserve knowledge, to warn of some cosmic threat the precursors discovered. If we can access that knowledge. First things first, Vasquez cut in through Chen's comm link. Can you stop it from connecting to the other nodes? That energy surge would still be catastrophic regardless of the system's intent. Thala concentrated again, the other Lumiri following her lead. Together, They conveyed a simple concept to the ancient system: delay, wait, not yet. To their astonishment, the system responded. The pulsing slowed, the energy readings stabilizing. It worked, Dr. Khatri breathed. It's entering a standby mode. Hours later, in orbit above Lumiere Prime, Admiral Vasquez faced a secure communication screen showing the grim faces of Earth's Defense Council. The situation is contained, she reported. The Lumiere have established a stable interface with the precursor system. It's been isolated from the wider network for now. And the conspiracy? Asked Counselor Dowan. Confirmed. We've intercepted communications between the Xaric leadership and their handlers. 3 high-ranking council officials were directing the operation. We're preparing the evidence for presentation. This changes everything, another counselor said. If the precursor network is a warning system rather than a weapons platform, there's more, Vasquez added. The preliminary data the Lumiere retrieved suggests the precursors were fleeing from something they couldn't fight. They scattered these preservation nodes across the galaxy as a warning to future civilizations. A warning about what? Vasquez's expression was grave. We don't know yet. But whatever it was, it frightened a species advanced enough to create technology we can barely comprehend. The council was silent for a long moment. Your orders are to establish a permanent research base on Lumiere Prime in cooperation with the native species. Full diplomatic relations are authorized. The lead counselor leaned forward. And Admiral, it seems humanity's isolation is officially over. On the surface of Lumiere Prime, Ambassador Thala stood beside Commander Chen, watching as human and Lumiere worked together to rebuild the shattered crystal spires of the capital. Your people work quickly, she observed as prefabricated structures rose to provide temporary housing. Necessity breeds efficiency, Chen replied. It's a hallmark of evolving on a world that constantly tries to kill you. Thala's tendrils shifted, and what humans had learned was amusement. The Deathworlders came with a war fleet but stayed to build. It's what we do. Chen looked toward the horizon where research facilities were being established around the secured precursor sites. We destroy threats, but we also create solutions. My people still don't fully understand why you came, Thala admitted. Yes, there was the precursor technology, the conspiracy, but you could have simply destroyed it from orbit along with the Xaric. Why risk your people? Why help rebuild? Chen was silent for a moment. Humanity has been isolated for a long time, Ambassador, not because we feared the galaxy, but because we feared what we might do to it. He gestured toward the activity around them. Evolution on Earth taught us to fight, to survive at all costs. But it also taught us that cooperation is often the best survival strategy. He turned to face her directly. We answered your call with a war fleet because that's what was needed in that moment. We stay to build because that's what's needed now. As the twin suns of Lumiere Prime began to set, casting the rebuilding city in golden light, Thala contemplated the strange dichotomy of their saviors. The Deathworlders had come not with mercy ships, but with weapons of terrifying power. They had annihilated the Xaric without hesitation or remorse. Yet now they worked alongside the Lumiere, sharing knowledge, resources, and protection. Perhaps, Thala thought, that was the true nature of these humans, this species forged in the crucible of a world that had tried at every turn to destroy them. They understood threats in ways the peaceful Lumiere never could. They recognized when violence was necessary, and when cooperation was essential. They had answered a desperate call not with the gentle hand the Lumiere had hoped for, but with the decisive force that was needed. And in doing so, they had not only saved a species from extinction but potentially uncovered a mystery that would change the course of galactic history. The Deathworlders had brought a war fleet, and in its wake, they brought a future.